Sure. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, so this is a little view. So sometimes it's good to check on the predictions where we have gone. So it's still intact. So what do I want to say with this? I do want to change the perspective and go for long-term view. Where do we see the trends and what is going on and how competitive is Europe? And I come probably with a very high frustration here if it comes to industry policy and becomes by state and ecosystem support that we have. So that's why I want to see where are the tectonic movements, where are the players, and what is happening. So this desire to talk about that is very much triggered by my visits to the Middle East, where we have the PIF from Saudi, where we have the Mubadalas, investors of us from Abu Dhabi that really drive a very defined industry strategy and convert their industry and their very, very much. Like 25 years back, Abu Dhabi was 70% oil and 30% commercial, and now it's exactly the other way around. So we see that we really want to create big-time market cap, and we have a competitive economy. It does not go without a state support with industry policy. Where are we standing? Industry policy for me has a different point. So look, this is the global economy, the size and the mightiness of the different spheres. So we see already in the light yellow that Europe as such is not irrelevant, but it is heterogeneous and not as big as we have here. So let's go through the different countries, what they do and how they prepare for a geopolitical competition. So you have the Americans. And when you look at geopolitical competition, we have unfortunately learned that the defense is a big part of it. Because if you are not able to defend yourself, no contract is worth anything. So we see US big in spending. But US does something else. They are very, very decisive on industry policy. So they have the Inflation Reduction Act that supports companies big time. So, and it is to give you an idea, so a company like a Marvel Fusion, which does nuclear fusion, if these companies and innovations work, it's the most valuable company in the world. Yeah? So, and we were trying to find money for that, and we barely found any money in Europe. So with the Inflation Reduction Act, you go 2 months into the US and you get 150 million dilution-free to build a factory. So this is a competitive element that is drawn up by the Americans where we have to cope with. So they leave alone the Inflation Reduction Act, we have a bipartisan infrastructure law, we have the CHIPS Act, so there is big-time money and very elegant industry policy supporting entrepreneurs. And that is also with, we are always claiming about immigration policy. Yeah? People go to the US because you have a favorable economical environment, not on the social security system like here, but on an entrepreneurial environment where you are free to create. The Chinese do pretty much the same. They have a decent spend on defense, and they have Belt and Road, Silk Road initiatives, massive capital state expenditure. When we were going there to talk to state funds, you had at least 10 fund of funds for which has state money above 10 billion. So, and you can see here that also these kind of areas, they're organizing themselves in normal trade very, very efficiently. So here we show the interdependencies in trade between the UAE and the entire Asian space. So, and you see that they're working very tightly together, and it is a very tight-knit system promoted and reinforced by bilateral and multilateral trade. So out of this, the global industry has worked itself in a different way. So the geopolitical tensions, you see that you have certain areas, like Europe, like Africa, like North America. These areas are led by 1 or 2 nations. And these 1 or 2 nations are so decisive in designing the industry policy, the standards, and as well, who is allowed to trade with whom. Yeah, because there has been the whole CFIUS Act where you cannot invest in the US anymore. The Chinese have established the same. So these areas use their economic force and their legislation to massively do industry policy. So where does Europe stand in this whole? And let's check on the different sectors here. So we don't matter. So I'll give you an idea. Leave alone that nor on Milken, nor on the Future Investment Initiative, there's barely any European. Out of 4,000, 500,000 participants, you have below 100 Europeans. So meaning nor the companies represent themselves, but not even the states represent themselves. Yeah? And give you an idea, so the last FII, the first panel was Jimmy Diamond, Solomon was there, Larry Fink, Steve Schwarzman was the panel. Yeah? Leave alone, there was no one from Europe. And then in the next iteration, there was a panel with Chinese and Arabian people. And then Jeremy Hunt came. And out of this 1,500 people in the room, 40% left to go to the loo. Yeah? So I think nobody is interested in that anymore. And that is a missing self-marketing from our area. So, so I'm stressing the Middle East because the Middle East will be the epicenter, because there is the money and the industry policy. And if you want to move something, you need to be there. And currently, the Middle East is pretty much dominated by the US, because first, the US was a protectorate. Secondly, all the decisive families bring their kids to the US for education. And thirdly, which is really, really bad, and I barely can hold my temper, we have a foreign minister that doesn't want to advertise Europe or Germany. They want to talk about values and all this stuff. Yeah? So we are basically not taking our role, our necessary role, as doing an industry policy as everybody else does it. So, another example for this, for the representation of the EU. This was the Dubai Expo 2020. I'll give you a picture. 24 million visitors, yeah, countries, 192 participating. This was the China representation, this was the US, and this was Europe. Yeah? So I think we have totally lost it in selling as if we didn't have pride. There's so much great stuff to sell for Europe, but we simply don't do it. And that is reflected in the perception how the others see us. Second, capital markets. And as much as I admire the sixth presentation, I don't think we have capital markets, to be honest. So if you list something, it is total, the liquidity is ridiculous. Yeah, the level of analysts covering European companies is very, very poor. And the depth of the market and the relative valuation is not comparable. So we have a sort of, in a broader sense, more like a illiteracy on that end. So on the private side, in the US, there's a lot of money financing innovation, that is venture capital. We are financing the companies that at some point should substitute the ones that are naturally in decay. So they, in the US, 23% venture capital, in Europe, 0.02. So the same in the total of where are the relative market caps. I think to see that a Birkenstock, I think there's no more German company than a Birkenstock, has to go to the US to list, says it all. Yeah? So valuation, liquidity, you see also miles away if you come to take advantage of that. So the other thing is, even those companies where we think they are German or they are French or they are whatever, they are not, because the public listed companies all belong to US fund managers. So the ownership of UK companies by UK money pools has gone down from 50 to 8%. Yeah? So this is something which is on the high level, something that politicians need to attack. So the third one is the defense spending. And I will hammer down a little bit on defense spending, because this is not an optional thing we need to do. It is a very compulsory thing that can already menace us in a way that would be very unpleasant. So you see, there's a very clear dominance on the defense spending side, that the US is spending more than everybody else. Or US is also responsible for 73% of the spending of NATO. So, and we are not spending. So to give you an idea, from the 100 billion that we wanted to put into defense, 22 already needed to fill up the ammunition because we didn't invest in them. So the problem is that the support in the US for the Ukraine war and for NATO is going down, and with Trump being elected, the financing of the NATO is a question. Yeah? You see this here. So that is a necessity, and this is where I come back to the long term. So we do need to take away this strange shame of not investing in defense. We do need to have to invest in defense. It's absolutely compulsory. So, and the Americans have already started with it. Andreessen Horowitz has set up a fund. The Sequoia has started to do the first ones, and General Catalyst has started that. And why is it? So give you some logic. So logic is, in the 60s, 70s, the states were spending something like 6 to 7% on defense. With the peace, it has gone down to 1.2%. And now it goes back to 2.5%. But because the war in Ukraine is fought very efficiently on the tech side, the ministries are contemplating to invest something like 5–6% into technology. If they do that, yeah, we are talking about 40 billion in demand from dual-use companies from the ministries of defense in Europe alone. So, and where will they invest? Yeah, they invest in dual-use technology, autonomous systems, like the Otarians here from Switzerland, quantum computing, artificial intelligence, aerospace. And this will also have secondary effects, because historically, the Americans have made big advances in very many adjacent fields to military. So look at this. These parts of normal innovation have all been developed and financed with state-backed institutions like the DARPA, like In-Q-Tel, and others. So they basically were the reason that some of these innovations will exist, or existed, and then found its way into normal products. So here you see, this is all the different funds, sources of funds, where these kind of technologies get funded in the US. We do not have that in Europe, to be very clear. So that is why I started with the NATO the initiative to have this 1 billion fund, so that we get into the direction of being a little bit more the master of our own destiny if it comes to European defense. Yeah? So there is the need to finance that stronger than ever. Yeah? So you do also decent return prospects, because don't forget, in the absence of funding, nobody even started these kind of companies, and we do need to regulate these kind of things. Maybe at the end, I give you also some kind of examples why I'm stressing on geopolitics and defense. Yeah? So 70% of the raw materials you need to build explosives are with China and India. So they have already started to restrict the export to the US. So at some point, yeah, there will be a limitation to have a defense in the normal way. So what do you need to do? You need to have new weapon systems, which basically start to be in the sector of energy weapons. So that that you need to have innovation in this field, because otherwise you have a structural dependency or limitation by supply chains to have these kind of defense possibilities. So I'm happy to dig deeper if somebody is interested in this kind of sector. But so to sum up, I think my desire to support Europe was very, very strong all the time. And I always had hope that, that the politicians would come around. I think this has been tamed a little bit lately, because I haven't seen decent initiatives. These are always like fig leaves. If we are celebrating a 1 billion investment in Europe, and we pay 43 billion in Bürgergeld, so that is how we invest into the future. This is a little bit uneven in priorities. So we do have to have a real push that politicians take it serious, and we also need to have a real rethink on dual-use stuff, because this is the sector that will drive monster returns. So if it is 40 billion in demand from the ministries, if these companies have a 4 to 6 revenue multiple, we're talking about 200 billion market cap for the next 10, 15 years in Europe on these kind of things. So this is where I do think there is a sector in mid-long-term outlook which I think is attractive, and where we do have a unique opportunity here. Thank you very much.